What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to another Getting Started video, where today we're going to be talking about monsters in Ray class. So what are monsters, and what are the different potential types of monsters you may bump into, and what are the different types of charges and abilities that they may have. So we're going to do kind of a mini series on monsters where we do a couple of videos chatting about specifics of monsters that you're going to bump into as you play through Path of Exile. So first off, monsters are hostile creatures that reside in almost all areas except for towns and hideouts. Slaying monsters is the primary source of gaining experience in Path of Exile. Here we've got a wonderful picture. It looks like kind of like a happy little monster over here. If I was Bob Ross, I'd say we're just going to paint a happy little monster up here in the top right corner. But anyway, I'm not Bob Ross. So, monster mechanics. Let's get into it. Monsters have life and energy shield and associated regeneration rates, just like player characters. These can be seen by the monster's health bar. Monsters also have armor and evasion ratings and resistances. So armor and evasion cannot be seen in the interface. The monster's list of skills will indicate if it has positive resistances to specific elements, but not the value of that resistance. Negative resistances will also be listed as vulnerabilities. So if you've ever attacked something and it says resistant to the elements, or resistant to lightning, or resistant to cold, or vulnerable to cold, or vulnerable to lightning, or vulnerable to fire, that's how it's going to get listed underneath the monster. Monsters do not have mana and will use special abilities and monster skills at a set rate or randomly according to their AI behavior. So that's really helpful, right? Like, hey, it's either going to be set and consistent or it's going to be random. It's just one or the other. But that being said, generally you can get to know whether or not a monster is going to randomly cast something or if it's on a cooldown or a cycle. You'll be able to tell that as you're playing the game. Monster rarity. Monsters come in 4 types of rarities. Normal, the most common, and spawn in large groups. Magic, increased statistics, and they give 1 monster affix. They appear in smaller groups. Rare, greatly increased statistics, and are given 3 monster affixes. They spawn by themselves or with a group of normal monsters, but multiple rares may still be close together. And then lastly, unique monsters, custom monsters that appear in certain areas. This includes bosses. So you'll notice that just as items are broken up into normal, magic, rare, and unique, so are monsters. The statistics increased by monster rarity are life, damage, experience gained on death, item drop rarity and quantity, and flash charges gained on death. Monsters of higher rarity drop items of higher item level. Magic mobs drop items 1 item level higher than the area's monster level. So if you're in an monster area level 61 and you kill a blue pack, a magic pack, it's going to drop eye level 62. And rare and unique mobs items are 2 levels higher. So if you're in an area that's 61, like let's say Blood Aqueducts, and you kill a rare or unique mob, then it's going to drop at a 63 level. All right, shared stats. The following stats are shared by monsters. Please take note that individual monsters may have different stats. So base stats get capped at these numbers. Movement speed is capped at 128. Mana regen is capped at 1.6%. 20% of energy shield recharge per second, and base critical strike multiplier is at 130. So these are your base stats that whenever you roll, let's say, a map, or you encounter a magic or a rare or a unique mob that says that it's got increased critical strike chance, or increased energy shield recharge, or increased mana regen rate, or moves quickly, these are the base stats that are then going to be sped up or tilted one way or the other on the scales to increase. Now, various minions can have charges, so let's take a look. Minions deal 2% increased damage per 10 rampage stacks. This is all via rampage, which rampage you can get. There are several different ways you can get rampage. We'll talk about rampage in another video, but anyway, just know for right now that you can get increased damage to your minions. Minions gain 1% increased movement speed per 10 rampage stacks. You can gain 1% increased movement speed per 10 rampage stacks. That's you to the player. Then 15% physical damage reduction per endurance charge. So if you bump into a rare mob that's got a bunch of endurance charges, and it says has endurance charges or shares endurance charges with close allies, then that means that it's going to have 15% physical damage reduction per endurance charge. So if you've got somebody sitting there with 4 endurance charges, that's 15 times 4. You've got 60% physical damage reduction on that mob. That could be a little bit tougher to take down. 15% increased attack speed per frenzy charge, 15% increased cast speed per frenzy charge, 15% to all elemental resistances per endurance charge, 2% increased damage per 10 rampage stacks, 200% increased critical strike chance per power charge, 3 maximum endurance charges, 3 maximum frenzy charges, and 3 maximum power charges. So as you're looking and you see, oh my goodness, there's a rare mob that's got 3 floating power charges around it. That means that it's got a bunch of extra critical strike chance, and you may want to either blow it up right away or be careful in how you handle it. You're going to want to watch out because that thing could crit you and you could go down real quick. 4% more damage per frenzy charge. That's pretty sick. That can get up to 12%. 5% increased movement speed per frenzy charge. That's pretty nice. That can go up to 15%. And then you can have up to 1,000 rampage stacks. But again, that's rampage. We'll talk about that later. Okay, so maximums. These are maximums for monsters. 20% of maximum life per second to maximum life leech rate. 20% maximum mana per second to maximum mana rate. So in other words, unless you have the passive notable that says enemies cannot leech life from you, it's possible for a monster to actually be leeching life off of you as you are fighting it and interacting with it. It can, of course, have 75% chance to block, 75% chance to block. It can have 75% chaos resistance, 75% cold, fire, and lightning resistance. It can have up to 75% physical damage reduction, which that would be a really tough mob to bring down. It can give you up to 20 corrupted blood rain stacks, which is just nasty. We're going to do a whole separate video on the different things that mobs can do to you, corrupted blood being one of the worst ones. Can have up to 4 Viper Strike orbs, can have up to 5 explosive arrow stacks, can have up to 75% dodge chance, can have up to 75% spell dodge chance, can set up to 3 traps, can remove 5, can set up to 5 remote mines, and can summon up to 1 totem. Alright, so then of course there are bosses and then a whole list of monster types. But really quickly, there are certain categories of monsters that can only spawn in specific locations or situations. So we've got unique monsters. So for instance, in this challenge league and incursion, there are specific monsters that we need to take down in the challenges. It is, where is it? Complete these encounters. Kill these unique monsters right here. You have to kill each of these unique monsters. So each of these aren't necessarily a boss, and you can actually look and see where to find each of these guys, like the Bundle of Woe, I think is in Act 5. The Great White Bones, I think that's in Act 4. The Rotten Matriarch, she's in Act 5, I believe, or Act 6, right after you turn everything in the Orias Square into terrible nothingness, into the outbreak and the rebellion. Rayahara Tukahoma's Loyal, that's in Act 7, I believe, or Act 6, the Defile Proclamation. Anyway, these are unique mobs that are not necessarily bosses. They're not going to necessarily be clearing bosses or along the main progression of the main game, but they are nonetheless going to be prevalent throughout the game and restricted to their own zone, exactly where they can drop. So those are unique monsters. Then you've got corrupted monsters, which of course are going to be examples, would be Beyonders are corrupted, as well as potentially corrupted bosses. If you use a Vol Orb on a map and it rolls, then it's going to have a corrupted boss on it, which simply means that it can have additional stats that make it really, really tough to take down. Beyond Demons, we've mentioned them. Rogue Exiles, which Rogue Exiles can spawn up all over the place. You can bump into those even as you're leveling. And then Tormented Spirits that are, of course, were related to a league. They actually were a league mechanic at one point in time to have the Tormented Spirits float around. So they come out in very specific circumstances. They can be rolled onto a map just like, say, a Breach or an Abyss can be rolled onto a map. So there you go. There are bosses and then a bunch of different specific subsets of unique monsters, and then of course we've got a whole list right here that you can run through of where different types of monsters spawn. So if you ever see anything like you roll a map and it says area is inhabited by goatmen, or area is inhabited by animals, or area may contain more demons, like what it means is it's going to spawn additional packs that are this particular type of monster. That's all that means. So anyway, check back in for our next video. We're actually going to talk about some of the monster affixes, so some of the different things that monsters can roll and some of the different moves that monsters can perform on you. So stay tuned. As always, leave us a comment if you've got a question down below, or you've got an idea, or just something in Path of Exile that confuses you that you'd like to learn more about. Drop us a comment down below, and who knows, it may be the subject of one of our next videos. As always, like and subscribe, and feel free to click on the link down below to check out our Patreon page.